Hi everyone, we are back. This is Utsav Pathak. I have Nakul Saluja with me. Nakul, hi.
Hi everyone.
Hi. Guys, we have the next moving forward with the next set of events, next set of speakers. Sorry, our next presenter for the day is Mr. Randhir Singh, Director Electric Mobility at Niti Aayog. Randhir is an MBA from IIM Calcutta, BTech from NITB, PMP Project Management Professional, certified senior level project strategy and finance experience for startup, turnaround, and high growth corporations. He's currently working to transform transport mobility in India, batteries, leading ACC programs, and also technical jury member for battery swapping standards, EV infrastructure. He has released several reports, including the handbook, and working on several projects with industry and state governments. He's involved in senior official dialogues for COP26 and efforts in the direction of decarbonizing the transport sector, including the option of hydrogen in some segments. Please give a big round of applause to Randhir. Hi, Randhir. If I may request you to kindly take the stage, please.
Just a second. I think there is some technical glitch. He's just joining us.
There or not? Yeah, he's there now.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yeah, Randhir, hi. Hi. Yes, please. Now you are.
Yeah, we're able to hear you now, Randhirji.
Perfect. So
Yeah, please go ahead.
thank you very much, and thank you for having me here.
Of course.
Pleasure, sir.
Should I continue?
Please,
go.
please, sir. Please,
sir.
please.
Please, sir. Stage is yours.
So, I have been asked to talk about how Indian regulators' schemes and regulations have impacted the startup ecosystem through their schemes and initiatives. India has the third largest ecosystem for startups in the world, and the number of such firms is growing by 10% per year. With around 54,000 DPIIT recognized startups, over 50 unicorns, and a beeline of IPO bound companies, the startup ecosystem is anything but small. Ever since 2021, one or more startups have joined the $1 billion valuation club, adding almost 23 new unicorns to India's tally in 2021 alone. Now let us analyze the factors which impact the most for a startup ecosystem to develop in any country. I'll call them 5 pillars for the startup. First is the financing or the investments. Second part is the regulatory framework. Third is the infrastructure availability, and all this meeting through the demand. And the fifth part, which is very important, is the policy certainty. It is different from the regulatory framework. In terms of the financing or the investments, in first quarter of 2022, almost 10 billion US dollar funding has been received by Indian startups. This is a sharp uptick compared to the 5.7 billion US dollar in the same quarter in 2021 and around 3.5 billion US dollar in 2020 quarter 1. In 2021 alone, total 42 billion US dollar was the funding which startups received, which is a sharp uptake compared to 2020. It was 11.5 billion US dollar. And the 10 billion which has been received this year in quarter 1, the last stage deals accounted for almost 45%, that is almost 5.8 billion US dollar. So most of the investments are happening in technology domain, in digital assets creation, cloud-based solutions. And in addition to this, major portion of the investments is also directed towards mobility segment, of course led by the electric mobility. These investments are also termed as the green investments. In April 2021, the government rolled out the Startup India Seed Fund Scheme. We call it SISP, which aims to provide financial assistance to startups for proof of concept, prototype development, product trials, market entry, and the commercialization. The central government allocated 283.5 crore rupees for the Startup India Seed Fund Scheme in budget 22-23, which is higher than the revised estimate of about 100 crore. The budgetary allocation for the fund of funds for startups stood at 1,000 crores Indian rupees. The government set up a fund of funds for startups, we call it FFS, with a corpus of 10,000 crore. SIDBI, that is Small Industries Development Bank of India, is the operating agency for the FFS. The most tech companies like Zomato, Cartrade, Moviquick, Paytm, Nykaa, even Policy Bazaars, they have had to sustain through changing tech policy space, external impacts like GST, demonetization, credit crisis, and two waves of COVID-19 pandemic to arrive at this point of public wealth creation through their IPOs and the investor exits. This boom in the startup has also been equally driven by the Indian government's efforts and vision of boosting entrepreneurship. After the announcement of Startup India in 2015, the government has worked on a slew of startup related policy reforms, including funding support, state level startup policies, and learning and development programs for startups, among other initiatives. Ecosystem has increased to 15% year on year in 2018, while the growth of number of accelerators has grown to 11%. And as we all know, Bangalore has been listed within the world's 20 leading startup cities in the 2019 Startup Genome Project ranking. It is also ranked as one of the world's 5 fastest growing startup cities. You must be aware about the evolution of Startup India, a 5-year report which was released by the Government of India. Between January 2016 to December 2020, the startup created 4.7 lakh jobs, 4,509 crore Indian rupees investments, in total 384 startups, and through the 10,000 crore FFS. And 30 states of union territories have a dedicated startup policy. Now, turning the sides, the capital and oil are India's two most significant imports. So, in order to build a $5 trillion economy by 25, we will have to attract $100 billion of FDI into the economy every year. Our startup ecosystem acts as a magnet for global and domestic capital and channels this capital into job creation and consumption. Now, startups have emerged as one of the principal engines for job creation, capex, and the consumption in the Indian economy. Now, what has happened in the mobility segment, wherein a lot of investment has happened recently? And in fact, if you see the number of product linked incentives which has been released by the government of India, in fact, I should call it the production linked incentive. But if you go and see how these incentives are being designed, so overall total comes around 1.94 lakh crore. So overall, this investments, if you see, most of the investments and most of the things are for the advanced components, advanced technologies, and to make this country self-sustaining in terms of the manufacturing. So all of these investments, so initial investment, the PLI, this might be resulting in the companies which are already at a certain valuation, but the ecosystem which they creates, that ecosystem helps in flourishment of the startups. For example, if we are talking about the advanced chemistry cell program, which is to create, the supply side for the startups which are now running in the e-mobility segment. In fact, instead of legacy automakers, it is the startups in the e-mobility segment who are leading this torch, who are leading the torch. In fact, they are leading the entire segment. The legacy automakers are still apprehensive about pouring into this new segment. So the startups are the one who are doing new business models, be it the in the financing side, with the battery swapping side, wherein the charge point operators are entering, the battery assemblers are also entering, and the cell manufacturers are also entering. The startup like Log9, they have recently concluded their 0 day, wherein they have manufactured live the first cell of our country. The first time advanced chemistry cell has been manufactured. So these are the startups, and in fact, the startups, I should say, they are the ones who are leading the e-mobility segment in our country. Now, what is the most crucial or the expensive item in the e-mobility? That is the battery. Battery comprises of 40 to 60% depending upon the segment in which it is being deployed. This is the area wherein there was no availability within our country. There was no indigenous cell available, and the prices which are available around the world, $137 per kilowatt hour in 2021, these are not applicable for India. In India, the same cells you will get around $180 per kilowatt hour because it is not manufactured. And in cell industry, you need to produce at least 5 to 8 gigawatt hour to achieve the economies of scale. So that means we have to come out with the program wherein the cells are not only manufactured in our country but also to our requirement. And these cells are being utilized by the e-mobility companies, be it the charge point operators, battery operators, the swap stations operators, the fixed batteries. All these people have to utilize and get these cells, not only in terms of the lower cost but also which suits to our environment. So for this 50 gigawatt hour program was launched by the government of India, and the bids are already finalized. It has already been awarded to the 4 successful bidders. We will see 2 years from now the out of these gigafactories first cell coming out. This will do both the two things. It will bring down the prices for India drastically, as well as putting the best of the technologies at the forefront in e-mobility segment in our country. We also have a provision that if the bidder moves horizontally or vertically for the better technology in terms of the cycle life or the watt hour per kg, they will receive a bonus, and this bonus is quite high. So that means in terms of the technology also, we are pushing these people so that the next vertically aligned segment gets the best of the technology available. All these things together are creating the EV ecosystem in our country. So this is from the supply side. The next part is the manufacturing side, which is the parts and the vehicle. So we have a scheme for the auto PLI, which is around 26,000 crore INR. In this scheme, we have two components. One is the champion OEM, Second is the parts champion OEM. So that means one is for the parts and one is for the weaker side. In both these segments, there are provisions, and there are provisions wherein you can form the cohorts. You can come with other players also, although the minimum investment or the minimum value which is required is quite high, but then you can collaborate with somebody else and come and bid for all these. Nevertheless, out of this, what is going to happen? The other ecosystem, the ecosystem will develop. This ecosystem will definitely facilitate the development of other startups, right? So whenever any company comes, anything is set up, they require a overall supporting system. So that is what the idea is behind that. In terms of the infrastructure, so again, I'll be talking about more from the e-mobility segment because that is the area wherein a lot of startups has come out, and I'm also leading the e-mobility segment at the Niti Aayog. So in terms of the infrastructure now, what type of infrastructure is required? One is the charging infrastructure. But with the battery swapping picking up in our country, the battery swap stations are also going to be the center of this infrastructure. In terms of the battery swapping infrastructure, so in the recent budget, if you might have noticed three important things. Number one, battery as a service will be created. A policy for the battery swapping will be launched, and interoperability will be ascertained. So there will be standards around interoperability. These are the important things in the budget. Around these lines, we have recently launched the battery swapping policy in the public domain. It has already been released for the public consultation. This is the part two of the public consultation which we held before the draft preparation. It was in the March. This particular battery swapping policy is going to impact all the startups. Around 50 of the startups which are currently running in the battery swapping area, we have done a consultation with them, one-on-one consultation in cohorts through the writing. They also, some of them have visited our offices to meet us and have submitted their requests, they submitted their recommendations, and we have incorporated most of this. The response for the policy is tremendous, it's very good. But then also we are engaging with them through a drafted form in which they can actually give their inputs in a segment wise manner. So these inputs we will take not through the form only, but we'll engage with them one on one also. So registration for that has also started. We have already notified this through our social media forums, the Niti Aayog social media forums. You can always visit those. So we will be engaging with them one on one also, so that they can submit their recommendations for this battery swapping policy. The second thing in the battery swapping is going to be the standards. The standards are very much required. In fact, this is something which targets the interoperability part of the budget. So what is the interoperability? How this is going to impact the startups and also the legacy automakers, not only the car makers, because India is majorly a two-wheeler dominated country, wherein around 76 to 80% of the two-wheeler of the total automotive market is the two-wheelers. So how this is going to impact that part? Let us assume that in the battery swapping space, you are the first person who has launched the battery swapping. I will compare the battery swapping with the SIM and the mobile. So in the mobile, you can have a different shapes, different sizes, but the size of the SIM remains the same. It's actually the now almost everybody has shifted to the micro one. Just think of a situation wherein the size of the SIM also varies with the operator. So if Airtel has a different size of the same, Geo has different size of the same, BSNL has different size of the same. That means the mobile manufacturers has to do two things. Either they have to make the slots for all these batteries in their mobile, and if they are going to do that, that space, either the mobiles will become bulky or some of the battery space will be eaten by this area, or they will collaborate with one of the sim providers and say, "Okay, see, in our mobile only this sim will go." These are the two possibilities, and in both the cases, who is at the loss? Consumer is at the loss. The same thing is happening with the battery swapping also. And if, since this is a sunrise area, this is the right time when we can focus how the customer can benefit. So if the battery size is fixed and it goes into any vehicle, then it would be easy for you to have different vehicle and the different batteries. You don't need to own the battery. That's what battery swapping is actually meant for. You don't need to own the battery. It's a area which is totally technology disruptive, and it's still the technology is evolving. We every day in day out we are seeing a different technological disruptions in the battery chemistries. So you never know down the line in next 1 year or 2 year whether the NMC, that is lithium ion batteries, NMC chemistry will be valid, or LFP will be valid, or it will be taken over by the solid state, or aluminum air, or the zinc air. So this burden should not come on the consumer, so that all the things are managed by the OEMs. They can upgrade their technology as and when possible, but from the consumer part, what consumer has to worry about, how much power they are getting from this battery. That is what consumer has to worry about. So these startups who are now in this space, they will be focusing on the technological development without worrying about the worries of the customer. They need not to always tell the customer, see, we are going to change the technology, you have to change the asset. It is not like this. So one of the startup which is not Indian startup, for example the Gogoro, they started their battery swapping with a 1.2 kilowatt. Now, currently, same size battery is being available in 1.7 kilowatt, and they have declared that within the next 2 years it will be 2.5 kilowatt. That means the asset utilization will increase for these startups, which is very much important. So interoperability, when the size is fixed, that means you can use the same battery in different vehicles. Plus you know, now the battery has to talk to the vehicle. So you need to have the communication protocol also same. And it also need to fix in the vehicle. So that means the connector has to be same. These are the three minimum things which has to be standardized. And that's what the interoperability is in this area. And this is going to benefit the startups mainly, because it's a big country. Not a single company can actually, or the organization can proliferate the biggest two-wheeler segment in our country. We have to transform the entire two-wheeler segment, and for this battery swapping policy is a game changer. The second part of this battery swapping policy will be the standards, and the third part would be the scheme, which would be announced by the ministry. It may or may not be the part of the FAME 2, but since we have already released the battery swapping policy, we need the recommendations and the support from your side so that we know wherein actual support is required. And the last part is the demand creation. So through the FAME subsidy, the demand has been created, and mainly this demand is being fulfilled by the startups in the e-mobility segment. Last year in June 2021, we revised the FAME policy, and after the revision, we have seen this ecosystem rising 10 folds. It's a 10 folds. Now, by the end of 2021, we have sold 4 lakh plus vehicles, which was just the 40,000 vehicles, 40,000 odd vehicles a year before. Almost 10 folds increase has happened because of the change in the demand incentive. And this demand, right now the situation is that the companies are not able to fulfill the orders in the e-mobility segment. So some of the startups which are in touch with us, they are opening the factories in and out on a daily basis. Some or other investments are happening, factories are being opened, And the government of India has made its vision very clear that the future is EV, future is electric, and the green transition has to happen. Thank you very much.
Hey
Over
Randhir,
to
hi.
you.
Yeah. Hey Randhir, hi. Thank you so much for taking us through your thread of thoughts. Honestly, even I didn't know much about the electric vehicle space, that so much of traction is actually happening. But it is actually very enlightening to getting it to know from you, in your own words, through you, because we are also getting to know a lot from various social media platforms, various open sources, but we don't get to know what is actually happening on ground. So when it is coming directly from you, so
Right.
obviously it opens up our horizons, our thread of
Right.
our horizons broaden up, open up. So yeah, much help. Nakul, what's your view?
Yeah, as you rightly mentioned, to get to hear from Randhirji itself, very in-depth top-down view from a regulator standpoint. You and how Randhirji, kind of brought, highlighted the various elements and various players involved in the e-mobility segment. Like Utsav said, we both actually do read a lot and we are involved with a lot of startups. But we ourselves didn't know the kind of initiatives, the in-depth initiatives and holistic initiatives Niti Aayog and regulators are actually planning in this upcoming space, which is definitely a new paradigm that's coming up, and that's
Sure.
the future. So very, I think, very enriching and enlightening to understand how holistically government and regulators are actually thinking about various dimensions in this space, and looking at the input costs and the various elements that would actually encourage the manufacturers as well as developers, or even the other players who will actually kind of push this space into the future. And and hopefully India will be at the forefront with such great policies backing it.
Definitely.
Thank you, Randhirji. Thank you for taking out time and being a part of our event. Really appreciate, sir. Looking forward to having you for our future events as well, and most hopefully in person. So yeah, I mean these virtual events needs to beyond the scope of these virtual events. If we can, all of us can come together and have an event in person. I guess that's what we are planning to do at next level. So we would like to have you at our future events as well, and really appreciate you being a part of it, sir.
Right,
Thank you
Randhiji.
very
And
much.
Randhiji, if you have, if you don't mind, if you have a couple of minutes, I think we have a couple of questions coming in.
Sure,
One of the
sure, sure.
questions,
Please, we have 5 minutes.
sure, thank you. One of the questions is from Mr. Kabir Uppal. He's actually asking, where is the opportunity for entrepreneurs that are passionate about the EV space and have non-technical backgrounds? So, sir, if you can probably shed a bit of light on his question, please.
So, EV space, if we talk about the total value chain, so there is something called the manufacturing. Then there is something called the supply. Then there are the charge point operators. Then the facilitators. So in all these segments, in fact, there are certain manufacturers who are also not of the technical background, but they know the business dynamics. They know how the business runs. So you have to assemble, you have to get the right talent. That is one thing. But then if you want to do as an entrepreneur yourself, the first part which you can do is the charge point operator. In the charge point operator space, in fact, the maximum people who are right now operating are not from the technical background. So in case of the charge point operator is exactly similar to the petrol pump operator. You need not to know the dynamics of the diesel, petrol which you are using, but you can still operate the petrol pump right. The similar way, the charge point operators, the charging points are operated, are being assembled, are being fitted, and are being supplied by the operators and the franchisee owners who are not from the technical backgrounds. So I must say, not being from the electrical or electronics background, this should not be a deterrent for you to enter in this domain.
Absolutely, sir. And as a segment develops, a lot of opportunities do come up for various kind of roles. Various corporations and enterprises will come up. A lot of opportunities for every kind of professional comes up when a sector develops. So I'm sure, Kabirji, that answers your question. And Randirji, if you would probably like to share some good resources for our attendees where they can probably go and read this up more, or if they have any questions, can they reach out to you or any particular
So
stakeholder?
we have, in fact, during COP26, Niti Aayog has launched a portal. The name of the portal is E-Amrit.
Amrit.
E-Amrit, the portal which is launched by the Niti Aayog. You can also find the link of that particular portal on the Niti Aayog portal, or the
Right.
directly in the Google also you can search E-Amrit, A-M-R-I-T, E-A-M-R-I-T. It
Right,
was
sir.
launched, it was launched during COP26. All the resources, everything is available there. Even the context details of the concerned persons are also available. There's a live chat available. In case you face any issues, you can always go to that live chat. In addition to this, all the state EV policies are also being housed there. You can also access the state EV policies, which is in addition to the incentives which are being provided by the federal government. So those are the complementing policies which are there. And if you want to look at the particular thing and you cannot find it, you can always put in the mail at the help desk.
Right, sir. That's very helpful, sir.
That is of much help, sir. Thank you, Randir ji. Thank you for taking out time. Really appreciate, sir.
Thank
Uh,
you.
moving on to the next segment. Moving on to the next speaker. Our next
Thank you
presenter
so
for
much, sir.
thank you, sir. Our next presenter for the day is Mr. Siddharth Dhondiyal, Executive Vice President, Vadhvani Foundation, based from Bangalore, India. Siddharth is the Executive Vice President of the Vadhvani Venture Fast Track and Vadhvani Catalyst Fund programs of the Vadhvani Foundation. An experienced private equity, venture capital, and angel investor with over 15 years of experience in the investment sector. His last stint was as a managing director in True North, where he focused on investments in healthcare, consumer, education, and IT sectors. Prior to that, he was a management consultant in the strategy team at Anderson Consulting, Stroke Accenture, and advised clients across industries like healthcare, education, consumer, and IT sector. As a member of the investment committee of Grow X Ventures, he has worked extensively in evaluating, investing, and mentoring early stage companies across ventures. Siddharth is an alumni MBA from INSEAD, France, PGM from IIM Kolkata, and a BTech from IIT Kanpur. Sorry. A big round of applause for Siddharth, sir. Sir, if you can have your presence on the stage, please.
Hello. Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Siddharth, sir. Hi.
Thanks. Hey, my understanding this was a panel discussion. So,
Right.
if you have any guidance for me in what you want me to focus on or talk about, I'm very happy to do that. Are there going to be questions? Is this a moderated panel?
Sir, no, sir. This was actually be a speak up event where where the expectation was that the speaker will come and present his or her thoughts on the the discussion. However, I can give you a heads up as far as the question was concerned. Which we wanted your looking forward your thoughts on. So the question was how Indian regulatory landscape has impacted the startup ecosystem in India. So yes, it was it is to be a 30-minute speaking event where we look forward to hear from you. But however, you can put forward your thoughts
Right.
exact just like you want, sir.
Right.
That's sir.
So Siddharth sir, like having said that, that was the theme of the session, but we are completely open to hear your views
So,
and learn from your
so
experience.
Yes,
look,
sir.
So
what I came for was,
Yes, sir.
how growth startups and their innovations
Right,
are influencing the whole supply chain and are creating impact.
right, sir.
Uh,
So yeah,
so,
sir, no problem.
absolutely.
We are open to it, sir. You can put forward your thoughts for that. Look forward, sir.
yeah, I would love to have a discussion. So let me open with saying that telling you a little bit about the Vadhvani Foundation to give you a sense of what we do, and
Right,
then
sir.
I will provide context. So
Sure, sir.
I had the Venture Fast Track program, which is
Right, sir.
basically a program of the Vadhvani Foundation.
Sure, sir.
The Vadhvani Foundation is a not-for-profit foundation started by Ramesh Vadhvani, who's a tech billionaire based out of Silicon Valley of Indian origin, and he signed the giving pledge which Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and all have signed. And the foundation has one singular mission, which is to increase jobs in emerging markets, and that's what the foundation sort of focuses on. So the foundation itself runs multiple programs we have a program called Vadhani Opportunity, which focuses on skilling, basically giving employability skills to thousands of Indians who don't have that kind of support to help them to get jobs. And so we have a lot of content which we work with NSDC partners to ensure that people can get jobs. Now, of course, we also define jobs as jobs which are family supporting. So we believe that if you have a minimum job of, let's say, 12,000 rupees per month in urban areas, then you can support a family, which gives the family dignity. You're able to educate kids, and so the impact is significant on the family. Um, we also work with we have a consulting program which we call Vadhani Advantage, where we work with small and medium businesses to help them grow at 4-5 times their size by providing them with consulting assistance.
Sure, sir.
We also have a Vadhani Institute of Technology Policy, which is working with the Indian government bureaucrats to educate them about the new technologies that are coming in from a governance point of view and how technology can be used. Coming to the whole entrepreneur ecosystem, we operate two broad programs. One is called the National Entrepreneurship Network, where the focus is essentially on inspiring students in various colleges and even in some of the college incubators to get inspired by entrepreneurship so that they can create jobs, do their startups. And we all know how startups are changing the whole landscape of the Indian ecosystem. The program which I run is the Venture Fast Track program, where we work very deeply with startups and help support them become more successful. And so we conduct master classes, we have one-on-one consulting support, mentorship support, and so we work with a whole host of startups across the country. And I also head the Vadhani Catalyst Fund, which is focused on helping companies which are doing a good job in job creation with investment grants. So that's a little bit of a background to what the Vadhani Foundation and what I'm involved in. So let me sort of segue into the topic of the discussion, which is how growth startups and their innovations are influencing not only supply chains but creating a huge social impact. So let me talk about some examples because they really make things come alive. But before I do that, I think a few pointers to what is really the core of this discussion, right? So how are startups really influencing the ecosystem and creating impact? I think the key thing here is disruption and innovation. So our young entrepreneurs are coming up with new ways of solving problems. They are not burdened by the ways things have been done in the past. So I think innovation and disruption is a key element of why startups are sort of changing the ecosystem so significantly. Secondly, I think they're using these innovations to create societal impact because you have to solve problems of society, and these are problems which are ingrained in our society over a long period of time. Um, and that's really where the social impact meets the innovation and disruption. And of course, as impact funds and people who are interested in the social sector space, we have to provide them with support. And support really comes in two forms. One is in terms of providing mentorship support, in terms of providing technical support, in terms of providing them with business support, in terms of understanding how to go about making their innovations and the things they're trying to do successful. And of course, money, because a lot of the social sector startups uh, do not find ready private sector backers for their innovations. And so uh, at the initial stage, they do need support. And that is what, there are about 60, 70 odd impact funds, which are focused on providing them that critical piece of support early in their life cycle, which can help them scale up and then establish, finally, I think the final point is establish commercial viability. Because I think if the startups which are doing social impact have to really succeed at very large scale, then they need to have commercially viable models. And And that's really what I want to sort of talk about.
Absolutely.
So and the way the startups are doing this is, first of all, they are solving pressing problems. They may be small problems, but they are pressing problems. The market may not be big, but they're using technology to come up with solutions for these problems. And these are often local solutions. So these are, sons of the soil. They are increasingly coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities, even, cities which are tier 4. Um, and therefore they are also targeting populations which are not very privileged. So they are targeting the bottom of the pyramid, disenfranchised people in rural areas, women entrepreneurs. Um, and finally, one big element of the whole social sector impact of startups, which we at least focus on, is job creation. So can you come up with innovative business models which not only offer a service for uh, social problems, but are able to create jobs, lots of jobs in the process, and reasonably well-paying jobs. Because people also, in the impact space, we realize people also don't just want handouts. They want to be able to add value. It's about
Right.
their dignity. We are doing something, and therefore we are getting paid. We have a job which is available to us. And finally, one last point. I think the nature of these problems that are being solved are to do with safety, quality of life, dignity, solving some of the social problems that we see. And sustainability is a big element. So let me talk a little bit about how these growth startups and their innovations are influencing uh, and doing a lot of social impact and solving genuine problems. So let's look at a classic problem, right? Um, we know there is a huge India lives in the villages in rural areas. We know there is a chronic disguised underemployment problem in these areas. We know women almost never have any opportunity to hold jobs because they have other responsibilities. Um, and finally, let's look at what does the corporate world or the whole private ecosystem want. They want access to these markets,
Correct.
right? So there is a I've stated the problem here. In comes a startup. This is a company which where we have given an investment grant. It's a company called Frontier Markets. So what they essentially do is they are an assisted rural commerce platform. So they essentially provide quality products from over 2,000 odd companies in Rajasthan and UP, and they go down really at the district and taluk level to be able to work with rural women entrepreneurs, and they're called Sahelis. So essentially, these women, what they do is they not only store the products in their house, but they also have a digital app which they can use to go out and showcase the products to the village population which are relevant for that population. So these may be toasters, digital financial services, consumer goods. And so they curate the demand, store some of the stuff in their house, and then provide, they have a network of warehouses. And so they act as marketing agents and they sell these products. And these women are, they have about 10,000 odd women. So look at the scale of impact. These are in rural areas, women earning between 7 to 8,000 rupees a month, and they are providing access to a whole host of companies to access this bottom of the pyramid market, which a lot of these companies we've always heard, the large companies trying to build a rural distribution pyramid.
Right.
Um, so that's the kind of innovative model which startups are coming up with, which is solving this problem in such a beautiful manner. You're providing services, you're generating employment, you're providing, and a lot of the corporate partners are supporting this.
Right.
And the good news is it's an economically viable model. And so the company is now they raised their first round of 2.5 million in 2020, and now they're getting a significant amount of interest from private for-profit investors to raise about $20 million.
Right.
So that's a classic success story of how people with a vision willing to go down, understand. I think the key thing is to understand the rural context and
So
understand the nature of the problems that are there. Let me shift to another sector, healthcare. So if you look at the Indian healthcare sector, we have a very large population, so the need is huge. And it may, and it is no surprise to anybody. We have a heavy shortage of not only doctors but of trained technicians who can operate medical equipment. We also import close to 80%, 75, 80% of our medical equipment, which is very expensive. We don't have the technology. So if you look at the startup space, people are trying to. So the problem is you don't have enough trained people. There's a huge need. There's the classic 3-point problem, right? Access to healthcare, affordability of healthcare, and quality of healthcare.
Correct.
So these are the three major problems. Can you solve all of these at once? So let me talk about a company, a startup, which is actually doing that. This is again a portfolio company which we supported during the COVID times through ACT grants, where a lot of the private and impact investors came together to offer support. It's a company called Dozy. So they make a remote patient monitoring device which is able to monitor a patient in remote locations and give alerts, alarms if there are problems. So what it essentially does, if you look at the problem, and this is a problem not only in rural areas or the smaller cities, it's also a problem in the tier one cities. India has very few what I call intensivists. Now, intensivists are the people who can handle multiple problems in the human body. So let's say you have an accident, you have internal bleeding, some organ is damaged, you are having a breathing problem, there is blood loss to be stemmed. So these are doctors who know how to handle, and it's very specialized training. And these are the doctors who if you go to a hospital, you will see in ICUs. So clearly, this skill set is in short supply. We also know that there is a shortage of ICU bed supply in the smaller cities and in rural areas. And so what this innovation does, this patient monitoring device does, it converts a normal hospital bed into an ICU bed at 1/10 of the cost. So you have AI based algorithms which can track vital trends, in patients well-being, give some early warnings, and then that can alert nurses, and then you can provide guidance on how to treat the condition. So they are now, they started off small. They are in 350 hospitals. They've converted about 7,300 beds. About 85,000 patients have been monitored, and about 8,700 odd nurses have been trained, and 150,000 nursing hours have been saved. So now they've gone on and become commercially very viable and received 18 odd million dollars in funding. So classic example of, again, taking a really big tough problem and coming up with an innovative disruptive solution targeted again at a disenfranchised population. Initial funding and support from impact, but moved on to a totally commercially viable kind of a model, and getting private funding from venture capital firms. And again, solving the three big problems of healthcare. It's affordable, it provides access to healthcare, and it's a quality service. um, so we are seeing that whether it be rural commerce, rural employment generation, um, areas like healthcare, there are people who are making a huge difference on the startup side. Let's also talk about another company, and this is just to give you a flavor of that. Things need not be at a extremely innovative, disruptive. Even simple solutions, if well executed,
Right.
can make a difference. Another portfolio company of ours is a company called Verve. They essentially provide accounting and legal services through KPOs in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So you're providing employment to chartered accountants, lawyers in these cities. They have a SaaS-based model, so it's do-it-yourself model. So and they focus on SMEs. So this is again, if you look at, there are well-served markets. So all the corporates, the larger companies have access to lawyers, chartered accountants. But how do small and medium enterprises uh, access the whole complicated? And you talked about, how can regulation be simpler? There are many ways to do it, but the current situation is that there is a lot of complicated compliances, etc., which need to be done. And this is a solution which is offering to SMEs who can't afford to spend a lot of money, uh, some very through technology driven do it yourself, supported by KPOs, where you can get somebody to help you in case you are stuck. Solution. Now um, they've scaled up to about 600 people. Very early days yet, but generating employment, and we expect them to create at least another 2,000, 3,000 jobs over the next 4 5 years. Already received funding from to the tune of $4 million from venture capital investors. So this is we've heard of rural KPOs. There are a lot of companies who are doing this. Another example of this kind of a model is, um, um, can you go to tier 3, tier 4 cities and set up KPOs where some basic skills are required, right? People who can type, who can read in English, you give them some training, because there is this whole huge demand for AI and ML services, right? Getting the data ready for being able to do a whole host of AI and ML kind of analysis to be able to offer solutions and services. So right from a Swiggy, Zomato, etc., they have to onboard restaurants, put their menus, and there is the AI and ML technologies need very good data to be able to make use of the data and give meaningful output. So there are examples of such companies, which are doing this. Also, one last sort of thought on a very large sector which is emerging is the whole gig economy, right? We've all heard of the gig economy, on how there is a lot of unemployment. There are people who have certain skills, but they cannot do. If you ask somebody who has pointed skills in doing something, you cannot ask him to do a managerial job, right? Because he doesn't have all the skills. So there's a company which you might have heard of called Avigna. It's an online platform which basically connects corporates to outsource some of their white collar jobs. And what they do is, this is either some core on the field kind of jobs which are broken down into small tasks. So they are easy for an individual person on the platform to do. Or it may be digital recurring work, which may be in the nature of cleaning up presentations, writing blogs. So a whole host of such white collar jobs which can be broken down into smaller pieces. So they have a process which sort of does that, breaks a problem down into multiple small problems, which can then be outsourced to workers. They have over 1 million workers now registered on their platform, and at least 15% of them are active every month. And they're earning between 4 to 5,000 rupees a month on an average. Classic example of how an innovation like this, which connects, and this is really a platform kind of a business. Let me also talk about two other models. How are we on time, guys?
We're fine, sir.
You're good, sir.
Okay.
We're good.
Um, so I'm trying to lay out the landscape on
Sure.
how innovation startups are making a huge difference.
Right.
Now, let's look at another classic problem which we are all aware of, right? Um, uh, Women, largely in the cities, and you can go to any tier of city you want to, are educated in India. A lot of them are, at least the a significant section of them are educated, but and they have their household responsibilities, etc. Maybe I'm talking about traditional families, but they do want to be able to work and contribute, right? and a lot of them at least have a graduate degree. So which means they can definitely teach school children. So there is a company based out of Bangalore called QMath, right? So they want to be the global maths company. And you know how important not only in India but across the world STEM is, right? The whole and understanding maths and logic, and children do need help in maths. So this company started off, with about a local model where they got housewives who knew math, who had studied, maybe done BSc or even arts, but could teach. It's not very tough teaching a class 6 kid maths, right? And they teach right up till K-12. They started off small, and now they have 10,000 teachers spread across the country who are providing teaching to children. And now the company has spread internationally, and so there is a huge value proposition. They're commercially viable. US is a large market, Europe is a large market, and these teachers are earning if they spend 5-6 hours a day teaching, and it's very flexible hours, so an ideal solution for the housewife at home. She can log in when it is convenient for her, maybe after her work is done, or maybe 2-3 hours at night, and they're making 60 to 70,000 rupees a month, and doing a great job in improving the quality of education and supporting children who are the future generation in a key area, which is mathematics. Let me also, I think the whole education skilling piece is really important, because it follows the logic that if you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime, right? So let's go to another very, very exciting company. And by the way, all these companies were initially funded by impact funds, right? And they have gone to raise private capital because they have viable models. This goes back to the initial point I made, that for this whole social impact and startups innovation to succeed, eventually you have to be commercially viable, because then you can really scale up and make a huge difference. Um, is a company called Masai School. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but if you look at the problem here, so India has close to 10 million graduates coming out every year. I think 1.5 million of them are engineering graduates, and from what I hear is a lot of them are unemployable. They don't have the necessary skills. The curriculums are old, and the parents have spent a lot of money on their education, and they are still not employable. And there is frustration. These are young people who want to work. They've put in the effort into their education. So what is the solution? And on the other hand, so we have 1.5 million engineering graduates. On the other hand, we have the corporate saying, hey, there's such a huge demand for these skills, it's impossible to get these people. You talk to any startup which is in the tech space, you talk to an Ola, Amazon, they're all struggling for talent, right? With the relevant skills in the new technologies. What Masai School does, it um, it it calls in students who are engineering graduates or have some basic level of science education, with an aptitude test. So they do rigorous selection. The student doesn't have to pay anything, and so they are trying to attract students who are willing to put in a lot of effort. It's a 7 or 8 month program which focuses on really some of the cutting edge skills, web development, Android development, and those kind of skills. They make you work 9 to 9, so it's not for everybody. So here's a young guy who's willing to put in the effort. His parents, he doesn't have to pay anything. Now then how does it work commercially, right? So you do self selection. So you first of all, you try to ensure that the people you get in are the people who are really motivated to get a job and do well, and there are enough of those, and they're coming from all the smaller cities in India. Second, you put them through a very intensive program, and you tell them one thing: you have to have 90% attendance, you have to do 90% of your assignments. But at the end of it, if you do that, we are not going to charge you anything. But if you do that, we will get you a job of at least 5 lakh rupees per annum, right? And if we get you a job of 5 lakh rupees per annum and above, their average I think is around 7 lakhs, right? And they're going to some of the best companies in India. Then we will charge you 3 lakhs over a period of 3 years, right? Which the employers are also very happy to pay, and the guy, it's a great payback. So I just highlighted the problem. Parents have spent money, people are looking for a job, the corporate sector is looking for a job, and here's an entrepreneur who's come in and sort of put in a business model which is very innovative, solves the problem, and does job creation, and they have a 95% placement rate. So I think people like me who've been around in the industry for a while, I think there was a 2000 timeframe startup wave, which was also driven by the internet, which didn't last very long. I think this time it's very different, because with COVID, what has happened is 7 or 8 years of digital evolution has happened in a 2-3 year time frame. And I think that has opened a whole host of opportunities for startups to really come and shine. One last note, I think uh, the government has also done a fabulous job in terms of setting up a lot of these incubators, Atal Innovation Centers, providing various funding grants um, to young entrepreneurs to encourage them. Of course, government can only play so much of a role in the place, but just increasing the whole base of people who are willing to take the risk, because running a startup is a very lonely, hard business, risky business. You're not taking up a job, you spend working 20 hours a day with no guaranteed income, no guarantee of success, and you're trying to solve extremely hard problems. So whether you look at the agri-tech sector, and I won't go into more details, I will open it up for questions and maybe other people to comment. But whether you look at the agri-tech space, people coming up with farm equipment, which traditionally Indian farmers have not been very equipment intensive. They're still working by hand. Whether you take dairying, or you take aquaculture, or you take even silk farming, most of the stuff is done manually without machines. So there are a whole host of entrepreneurs who are coming up with implements, machines, digital solutions where you use satellite imaging data, your soil quality data, to be able to provide the expertise to the farmer, when to sow, what inputs to use based on their soil. So very specific to their location. So that's a big wave that's happening. Again, on the medical side as well, healthcare, there's a lot of innovation happening on the equipment side. Of course, the hardware startups are targeting local solutions. It's not an easy, they take longer. But I think the government has really helped in sort of giving the seed money grants, tie up with academic institutions who have the relevant expertise, the IITs, and a lot of the university ecosystems. So I think, on our topic on how growth startups are really changing the landscape to, I think, not only their technological innovations, but their business model innovations. Because finally, it's the business model innovation, which is, I gave the case of Masai School. It's a business model innovation more than anything else. The NIITs, the AppTech education, training people in IT have been there. But this is a business model innovation. So I'm very hopeful, given we have around 60,000-70,000 startups. There's a huge pool of innovators, young people in India who are trying to make a difference. They're trying to solve social problems. The good news is they are not coming from only the top elite institutions. They are coming. It's become a much broader base. And these people are looking at problems in a very, very new and insightful way, which gives me great hope. With that, I'll stop here.
Siddharth sir, thank you so much for taking out time and being a part of this event. So yes, we were looking forward for some questions. There aren't any for the time being. I believe you have covered everything in much detail, all various wheels have been covered very well. So if I may request, sir, Nakul, you have any views you wanted to what's your view?
I mean, it's very heartening to hear the impactful initiatives such as Vadvani Foundation is undertaking, sir. Because I've had the opportunity myself to work with an impactful foundation. I've worked with Vodafone Foundation and Vodafone Ventures. When I transitioned from commercial startups to impact investing side, I was a little skeptical on maybe the focus maybe is impact more, touching lives more. But I was very I was actually awestruck by looking at the innovative ideas in the social impact startup space, and how driven the entrepreneurs are to make a difference. And it was very satisfying to actually to be able to kind of support such projects who are actually trying to make impact in the society. So like you mentioned, sir, I've had the opportunity to work with a few such startups from impact investing side. And it's very heartening to know that Badwani Foundation is actually undertaking such impactful work. I'm sure a lot of people social entrepreneurs and social startups would want to probably reach out to you, or look at Badwani Foundation's programs. And if they can probably you know if they have relevant projects, social impact projects, if they want to kind of reach out to Advani Foundation and get some guidance, or even probably apply for some impact funding. So I think that will be great for our audience. And
Absolutely.
it should be we'll be happy to share, sir, even if you would like to share any contact information, or probably a URL where they can social entrepreneurs can probably go and look at what kind of startups you are funding, social impact projects you're funding, and what probably you look at different programs. And if you could very briefly tell social entrepreneurs out there how they can probably reach out to you, and what exactly do you look at, and what themes you're looking at, or any criterias you have when you kind of shortlist these projects and would want to work with them.
Yeah. So look, as I mentioned that the foundation is very focused on not only helping in social impact, but we have a very strong focus on job generation.
Right, sir.
So that is we don't have a we can't measure ourselves on profit. So the only thing we measure ourselves on uh, is impact, and that did we create jobs, right? So
Right.
I will I listed down a few of the things initially, but let me go through some of them. So we have if you type in Vadhani Foundation, you will go to our website, which lists down all the programs that we run, okay, including the Catalyst Fund. And I'll talk a little bit about our VFT program and Catalyst Fund. But there's a lot of stuff that is happening right from the whole skilling space, where
Right.
if you're a company in the skilling space who are working with other foundations and we are doing something innovative in terms of running programs which provide either rural women or people from disadvantaged families, below a certain income group, below a certain, in tier three areas, women, people who are not getting jobs. Maybe these are, people who have done a college graduation but still don't have a job, and you're doing some skilling work. You're either giving them a 3-month, 4-month training, but and you may be getting funding grants from various agencies. We are happy to support you. Having said that, there are two things we look for. We look for, are you doing it innovatively? Number one, are you doing it at scale? And are you generating outcomes? So, if you're doing 200, 300 student training, it is good, but we can look at pilot kind of grants if you're doing it innovatively. So some people are doing self-paced learning through gamified WhatsApp based content. Okay, and these are employability skills which are very important as well. A lot of people coming from sort of the semi-rural backgrounds don't know how to work and behave in a corporate setting, right? For us, it's all seems very easy, but for them, it's a challenge. They don't like the rigid culture. They have to behave in a certain way. So there's a lot of soft skilling also emotional training that they need to undergo. Uh, but your model should be built for scale, and you should be focused on outcomes. So you should be able to show that these people got placed, number
Right.
one. So we focus on, you know, two, three elements. One, you're generating outcomes in terms of students getting placed. They're getting placed in, because that's the mission of the foundation, they're getting placed in aspirational jobs. And those aspirational jobs are defined as jobs which give at least 12,000 rupees. So they have family supporting wages. So we are not looking at 4,000, 5,000 rupees, especially in urban areas, because they can't support a family, right? So, you know, 12,000 and above, 15, 20,000 rupees a month. Third, the job should have some growth. So the guy is not going to be doing the same job. You know, there is some learning. He can become a supervisor and move on. So I think that's how we define an aspirational job. And the other metric we look at, retention. Is the guy, 6 months down the line, he got a job. Is he still in the job? And there are many reasons why people leave. A, they're not able to adjust. That may be one of the reasons. But I think one of the other reasons is that there is a whole industry which has come in to take government funds and train the same people again and again, and they keep shifting. So those are so that's on the skilling side, which
Right.
we can look at. Similarly, if you're in the you're doing something on the gig economy side, where you're building platforms which enable people to get jobs, you connect them to employers, you break down work, we are happy to look at it. We are also happy to look at anything on we started looking at the agri-tech side. If you can make a huge difference in farmer incomes, that's an area where we would love to talk to you. And of course, the whole I talked about rural commerce, right? Anything in the rural commerce side where you're working with the bottom of the pyramid and providing some services, jobs, livelihoods, economic models which work at the bottom of the pyramid with disenfranchised populations, we look at. That's from our Catalyst Fund. It's all on our website. You'll find the details, contacts there.
Right.
We also run a program called the Venture Fast Track program. It's sector agnostic. We work with startups who are looking for their, they may have got government grants, 20, 30 lakhs of rupees, and they are maybe in incubators, but they've got viable business models. Um, Business model. A lot of the startups have business models where the market size is not big enough. There may be other commercial problems with them, but we are looking at models where the startup has a successful business model. They've got some customers, their product is tested, it's validated, and they're looking to scale up and get funding. Now, startups need help. Most of these guys are, young technical guys. They don't understand business. They don't know how to go and approach investors. So our program is targeted at those startups who have viable business models. Their product is working. So a lot of startups will have a product, but no customer wants to buy it, right? So we are targeting guys who, customers are actually liking their product, using it, willing to pay money for it. So there is commercial validation of the product. We work and support those startups in looking at their business models, providing them with mentorship. We have expert master classes. We also have a technology platform which has a lot of content, startup related content, on how to solve a variety of, whether it be your unit economics, whether it be how to identify your customers, go to market, acquire customers, and so on. And we offer one-on-one consulting support to the startups, and then help them tell their story to investors. What we call a pitch deck, and to go out and pitch to investors. So that's the support we can and we provide. And a lot of the details you will find on our website on exactly what we focus. If you're a
Right.
student in a college, university, you're doing a student startup, then we have the National Entrepreneurship Network, where we run programs for colleges. If you're a college administrator who wants to start entrepreneurship programs, we provide content, faculty to actually run those courses in your college or university. Also, we take on startups in your college incubators. A lot of the government programs, every state has some startup innovation council, and they have They're supporting startups. So we work with those. All those details you'll find on our website. So not only
Sure.
individual startup students, but also colleges, universities, state startup programs, which are looking for support in being able to help their startups. The Vadhani Foundation is, this program has been running for about 20 years. So there's a
Right.
lot of expertise, experience within the foundation. And all of this, by the way, is pro bono. So there is no fee, cost, there's no commercial motive here.
Right, sir. That is really helpful, sir. Thank you so much for giving a very in-depth view of the impactful initiatives as well as the programs that you're supporting. I'm sure the participants and the audience would the right entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs would love to kind of explore more and probably reach out to you for any guidance or even
Absolutely.
with the relevant projects. Right, that's up.
Yeah,
Anything else?
absolutely. No, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate you being a part of our today's event. So yeah, moving forward.
Right,
Yeah.
sir. Thank
Right,
you
sir.
so
Thanks
much,
for your time,
sir.
sir. Yeah.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
so
sir.
much,
Thanks.
Moving on to the next presenter for the day, Asim Mukhi, Director, Advisory Services, CyberSage Solutions Private Limited, New Delhi, India. Asim has more than 15 years experience leading projects related with cybersecurity, privacy, IT security assessments, security policy and strategy development, amongst others. Asim has experience of working with various industry verticals and was formerly part of cybersecurity and privacy practice at PwC, EY, and Data Security Council of India. Currently, in his role as the founder and director at CyberSage and advisor at TriDiligence, Asim and his team focus on solving challenges related to cybersecurity for small and medium businesses as well as for startups. CyberSage is a risk advisory firm based from New Delhi, India. The team comprises a mix of talent with experience from the industry, academia, and senior officers formerly with the Indian Army. A big round of applause for you, Asim. Asim, hi, are you there? Asim, hi.
Hey, Utsav. Sorry, the panel just got activated.
No problem, no
It's just
problem.
loading up.
Yeah,
Give
yeah,
it
please,
a
please
second.
take your
Welcome,
time.
Asim. Welcome, Asim.
Yes, Asim, ready when you are.
Hey, hi, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, Asim. You can probably take it from here. You can even share your presentation.
Sure.
Over
Thank
to
you very much. Just give me another few seconds to get
Yeah,
this.
yeah, please, please.
Yeah, please.
Okay, here
I'm
we
actually
go.
really looking forward to this session from Asim. I got the opportunity to actually meet Asim, some months back when I started off with my own firm, and I think at the same time Asim also started, and very lucky to get in touch with him and to be able to work with him. I always look forward to his session because this is an area of my real interest, and it's a very it's a very real issue, real risk, and a real area where all the entrepreneurs should be cognizant of. So over to you, Asim. Stage is all yours.
Sure. Thanks again, Nakul. So, and like you said, this is definitely one of the areas where we need more strength, energies, and focus. However, and just on a lighter note, as it happens in the corporate world, cybersecurity comes last, like the session that we're having today. So, we've kind of squeezed it out
Right.
somewhere, we packaged it somewhere in the second half. I mean, just on a lighter note, okay. So, but really,
Right.
coming back to the agenda and the topic, uh, what I'm trying to talk about today is really, an aspect that most of us might overlook. And the reason I say that is that while even organizations who are familiar with the cyber risk and the digital risk at large, they kind of don't necessarily associate themselves as an important target for cyber criminals, and often they oversee and overlook the impact that a breach at their organization can have further down with the customers that they serve. And that essentially is something that we talk about when we look at the cyber supply chain. So, we've I think we've spent the day today talking about innovation, using technology, bringing about change, impacting lives of people, right? So those are all the benefits that we associate with improvements in technology and the innovation which is brought about. And really, when you look at the impact of innovation, you don't have to find examples; it's all around us. These three images are symbolic of where innovation and transformation has really, really helped. Even a local fruit vendor today, if you go to one today, you'll see that they're accepting payments through digital means. They're taking orders on WhatsApp and other messengers. They're also able to circulate a price list to customers who visit them often. Similarly, a superstore which has probably a better experience than that roadside vendor, and of course the online e-commerce boom that we witnessed today. All of these, essentially, if you look at it, one of the major transformations that we've seen, and one of the major pillars of transformation, has been the evolution in the payments ecosystem, right? It's made it convenient for us to make payments, and made it convenient for different vendors and different people in the ecosystem to accept payments as well. And as we speak, I'm sure there are better ways, more innovative ways, which are being thought of, which are being devised and tested across different organizations and startups. Now, if we generalize, right, and we look at it from an organization's view, now typically, if you see an organization, they'll work with an ecosystem of different suppliers, system integrators. Of course, they'll be working back with the financial sector in some manner. Uh, there'll be different functions that they have, which need external support. For example, communication is one of the departments that I've seen a lot of entities take outside help for, as well as people, right? It's not always that we have or we onboard all the skills that we need. There are always processes which get outsourced. And at the same time, we get temporary short-term manpower which comes in, right? Now, this same map, if you look at the different vendors and service providers at the edge, if you if you kind of extrapolate this and call them as organizations, you'll see that all of them have the same map extended for themselves. There'll be different technology providers, there'll be different organizations which in turn support them and enable them to provide their services to their end customers, right? So it's really an infinite loop if you look at it from a global supply chain perspective. And interestingly, one of the things that I was looking at was how e-commerce and other players in the market, how they substantially have a huge ecosystem of these vendors. Now, we may call them vendors, but each of these entities or vendors or suppliers or whoever they might be themselves are customers in a way where they use technology or products or anything for that matter which enables them to deliver that service, right? So it's really a complex scenario from a supply chain perspective. So we'll try and focus more on the cyber element and see, how that cyber supply chain can really be a source of risk, and try and validate the statement I made a little time back on how most often we overlook and underestimate our role in this supply chain. So here, we look at a few significant statistics. Of course, they originate from a report published a few months back by an agency called ENISA. That's the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, one of the trusted agencies which has reports that you could count on. If you see the top two, elements here, the first one tells you that a majority of incidents in the cyber supply chain targeted assets which were more to do with customer data and intellectual property, right? The second, the second statistic here essentially tells us that uh, in the in order to compromise a target customer. So, in the previous graph, we saw the organization which was at the center. In order to target that sort of an organization, about 66% of the incidents targeted a supplier's code. So essentially, because you're a trusted supplier, because you exist in the digital supply chain for another organization, probably a much, much larger organization than ours, we have a gate open, right, with them, to talk to them, to communicate with them, to deal with them, to integrate our services or APIs. Now, that gate being unsecure, or our product or service, or the solution that we have being unsecure, has potentially led to a large number of cyber incidents. What's also surprising, and because this is happening for a number of years now, it's not a new trend. It's not, cyber risk and digital risk are not new concepts at all. Just that the understanding and the fundamental leverage that people need to really imbibe them in their own organizations and culture, that's been something which has been lacking, which we time and again try and push for. But the other aspect here to look at is that in most cases, the supplier which was compromised, they failed to detect that they were compromised. Now, not having that visibility over your own environment, I would say that's a big risk. We may have the best of product, we may have the best of functionalities. Our customers may be happy, throughout the year, throughout a number of years that we've been serving them. But trust me when I say this, that one incident which may be attributable to your organization, to your product, solution, or service, will make your customer shut doors for you, or if not shut doors, have a little more suspicion in terms of what they want to do with you and your organization in the future. So that trust is essentially what a cyber criminal wants to leverage and wants to attack. So these were some of the reported breaches that I wanted to kind of highlight. Of course, nothing against any of these companies. They're doing a good job. They're growing in the market. A lot of customers trust them day in, day out. Unfortunately, there were points, back in time where there were certain reports that a breach occurred with these organizations. Their systems were compromised, and a lot of data, a lot of customer data, or financial information about their customers was exfiltrated outside to external parties. Now, a few of these companies, of course, came back and denied that the breach would have happened, or they sent reports saying that they were able to patch it in quick time. However, in a parallel economy on the dark web, which is mostly hidden, doesn't appear in search engines, you would find, if you're a researcher in our community, you would find records which could be attributable to any of these entities. Now, that's again pretty unfortunate because, as everyone spoke about today, we all believe in this growth story, right? We're all part of this. We've witnessed this growth story over the last decade, and instances like this, of course, create a dent in a customer's mind. Now, these are all organizations primarily which would be targets for a cyber criminal because they have huge troves of data, and essentially gathering that data for a cyber criminal is like gathering ammunition to fire in a larger battle. So that's how it makes relevance even for organizations that you typically wouldn't think of from a cyber supply perspective to secure themselves. So this is a pretty interesting, representation. This is not new. This is a report, probably a decade old. What is interesting and what I would want you to look at when you look at this picture on the left is how, let's say, and it's only an example, right? But you could easily, if you analyze a global supply chain, you could easily figure out that this is practically what would happen. So imagine a buyer in the US hires a system integration for some, for some technical activity. Now that one system integrator or that one vendor could essentially be relying on products and services which originate from so many different countries. Now, when you look at this chart, you also have to consider that each of these countries will have a different legal landscape. They'll have different laws and regulations which govern how information security should be dealt with. At the same time, the skills which exist across these organizations and these countries will be different. The cultural treatment of security and risk will be different. So when you integrate at a single point, you're also inheriting all the different vulnerabilities, all the different cultural aspects, all the different liabilities which come in, by virtue of that organization existing or operating from a specific region, right? And it's not just about systems, it's not just about technology, it's also about the people, the information which may reside with them. And those are again, different touch points which might be vulnerable. All of this together, forms a pretty risky environment and a pretty risky cyber supply chain. So that risk is essentially what we want to unravel, and we want to see what is it that we should change in our approach, what is it that we should look at as we go back today, or otherwise as we reevaluate our organizations and our products and services, and see how we can make a difference in this cyber supply chain. So of course, the risks, if you want to look at specifically, uh, like I said a while back, originate because that technology could be manufactured worldwide. And in that technology, while it's developed, vulnerabilities may either be inserted deliberately or inadvertently, where you're not aware that something has gone wrong. Probably could be an insider job, or could be a criminal operating, which was able to penetrate your defenses and kind of insert a malicious code, which got shipped to your customers too as part of your overall product. Of course, the motivations that these attackers may have, or these agencies may have, are of course to look at the intellectual property. They may very well be doing it to produce a similar product or a similar service or a similar solution in their own nation. Gaining unauthorized access, having control over an environment. We're all aware there's a war raging today in Europe. I'm sure reports about cyber attacks between different countries wouldn't have gone unnoticed, and that is the control that organizations or intelligence agencies or other agencies want to gain before a warlike situation really crops up. So those are that's the new normal for me. That's the trend that we witnessed over the last decade or so, and that's the real challenge with securing a cyber supply chain, right? Any organization, big or small, could be a target, and really, the people behind who are targeting could be as heavily funded as an intelligence service, or organized as criminals are today in the cyber world, or perhaps could be a demotivated employee who just doesn't care anymore. So that being said, there are other factors too. Now, because when we talk about the cyber supply chain risk, we also have to look at risks outside cyber threats. There could essentially be other scenarios which we should consider. For example, let's say there's a natural disaster, at one of the vendor, with one of the locations where your vendor is located, that could essentially bring down availability for you. Also, at times you would see that not a lot of vendors and service providers follow the best practices or the leading practices when it comes to producing different solutions and products, right? It could be very poor engineering practices, for all we know, which could also introduce that risk. While the product may look nice, the features may be great, the availability could be a challenge, right? So it's not always risk from a vulnerability. That vulnerability, if you extrapolate that with respect to poor design, could also be poor availability for a business. So those are essentially the factors that we need to consider when we evaluate risk from a cyber supply chain perspective. Let's elaborate a little bit more on the aspect around defects that we spoke of, and intentional vulnerabilities or malware which could be there. Now, both of these categories will give us code which is exploitable. So, for those of you who are in technology, I'm sure you would agree when I say that any technology that you use or you deploy today doesn't have a surety that it's going to be secure in the future. The very architecture of systems today relies fundamentally on something which we trust, which we've evaluated today, right? So with the given inputs, with the given considerations, we have a reasonable assurance that that technology works and it is secure. But you have to also remember that cyber criminals continue to research on those technologies, way beyond that we do, and with the end objective of finding that one single vulnerability in that code which would give them or allow them the leverage of penetrating another organization's defenses. So this is where we have to understand and evaluate that it's not always the external party or an intentional vulnerability. It is also the environment that we've created where we need to get visibility and be aware of at any point of time be aware of what could be certain associated vulnerabilities which have emerged today, which did not exist probably 100 days back when we started using this specific technology. That is extremely vital, as intelligence, or as enablement that we have to offer, not just to our organization, but to the very organizations which use our solutions and our products and services. Now, if you by now you've kind of latched onto the concept, or you were following the concept, I just want to add a little twist to the entire problem. So we were discussing till now how technically that vulnerability might come up and what sort of an impact it could have. Now, just adding a little fuel to this problem of trust that we have in the cyber supply chain, there are also geopolitical reasons, right, which are at play today. So the global economy, as we see it and as we understand it, people, countries, we're getting closer. Those boundaries are disappearing. Of course, the onset of the pandemic has accelerated that journey for people to be more collaborative. But that has also accelerated a lot of geopolitical trouble. Traditional leaders in the global ecosystem feel more threatened now. There are emerging economies. There are other aspirational economies which want to take center stage. That's all leading to a very complex world. Now, in that complexity, there is that trust problem that we've seen when it comes to the cyber supply chain as well. Here, the problem could be that the government may be wary of relying on a products generated from a rival nation. So while your rival nation may have organizations who have the best of products available, and they're global leaders, but because of that geopolitical challenge, you may not want to encourage organizations from that country to do business in your country. Another factor here could be that because of the association of a company with the services they render to a specific client, or the products they sell to a specific government, there could also be suspicion around it, or there could be practices that you've observed over time which give you a suspicion over a said company, and that could also lead to a trust problem. Another challenge here could be that the product itself has been found to be tainted or distrusted, which essentially would mean that there has either been a breach in the past, or the product or the company hasn't really maintained a brand which could be trusted anymore. That would also kind of lead and add to the problem of trust in the cyber supply chain. If you're in category 3, or if an organization you work with is in category 3, you would always be reevaluating alternatives for them, right? You wouldn't really want to continue, you wouldn't see a future working with that specific organization or product. And then there are also challenges with respect to giving assurance. Now, while you may be a trusted organization from a trusted country with no history of a breach or no negative track record in the market, you may not be able to provide adequate assurance to a government or an organization which you're going to work with. Now, many a times you would see that larger organizations have mandates around selection of vendors. There are different countries which have mandates around saying, if a following checklist is not fulfilled or requirements are not fulfilled against that checklist, then organizations cannot go and form alliances or go and purchase or introduce that service. Uh, right. So that's again a problem with respect to building assurances and giving those assurances out to your end customers. Now, all of these together, to me, are pretty complex to deal with. But fortunately, the answers lie closer to us. The answers lie closer to our own organizations. We'll come to that point in a bit. Before that, let's look at some of these examples, right? I mean, of course, these are a little dated, but these are better known. So I thought it's relevant to keep them here than the more recent ones. We're all aware of how relationships with our neighboring country went sour a few months back, and that led to a lot of apps being banned, which originated from that specific country. Now, those most of these applications or most of these organizations would have had presence in India. They would have created jobs in India. They would have been contributing to our economy in some manner. But because of that trust deficit and geopolitics between the regional politics here, that trust problem led to these technology companies exiting from our country. If they have not exited, they've curtailed their operations to the bare minimum. A similar thing happened with Huawei, which of course has become a classical case study in that trust deficit problem, where several countries banned Huawei from participating in launching the next generation of mobile services. Now, if you look at Huawei and how it is from a technology perspective, uh, you'll see that they are one of the global giants today. But because of that trust deficit between nations, and there were several reports about Huawei having backdoors. Even our country was trying to evaluate and see if they want to work with them anymore. So those were some of the problems which were regional, which kind of escalated and ended up impacting different organizations. Some of which would be startups, or some of which would be startups who supply to or work with larger organizations. So this is where we got to summarize in terms of saying what really is the cyber supply chain problem, and what should I be doing as a founder early on, or perhaps at a stage where I see myself growing and working with larger entities, working with global entities, helping other organizations in my ecosystem. What should be my mantra in terms of securing myself as an organization and giving those assurances out to whoever I work with in the future, right? So the very first thing is getting visibility around your own weaknesses. Now, it's easier said than done, but of course, there is always a view of, or you could acquire a view of, who would be the entities who may want to target you, and why would they want to target you. The answer very pretty much lies in terms of what sort of solutions or products you have, or what sort of technology you offer, and what could be the data that you deal with, what could be the processes that you deal with, what could be the sensitivity of the clients who you work with. So all of those are things that you need to gather from a visibility standpoint. Now, once you have that visibility, not always will you be able to conceptualize and turn it into a statement that can find an answer. The answer, of course, could come from either resources being available to you to kind of take the next level in terms of controls or risk assessment, or developing a framework inside the organization which kind of tracks and maintains that visibility across the the life cycle of the product or through the operations as they continue for your organization. Of course, the next challenge is then of having the relevant skills. And just in the previous presentation, we were discussing how everyone has jobs to give, and everyone is looking for team members, but we're not able to find the most skilled ones out there. Uh, and that's again a problem in our domain, in the cyber domain as well, where there are people who want to have that capability, but the best of minds are engaged, and there isn't a new generation of these cyber warriors or risk professionals who's which is coming up at the pace that the industry needs. So, well, all of that, while that's happening, it's not like your business has stopped, right? You're still working, you're still giving presentations, you're still talking to potential customers. So your priorities are going to drift away, right? Because the challenges from 1 to 3 took your time, and as a founder or one of the founding members or one of the senior executives, your bandwidth retention is limited, right? So you would want to prioritize, go back to your business practices, go back to work, but there will be that that little tinkle saying that something is vulnerable, you need to fix it. Or if you're aware of what needs to be fixed, you wouldn't know what to fix first, what would give you better coverage. So there are always challenges with respect to prioritization, and that's essentially one of the other things that really adds to the complexity of the cyber risk supply chain. And of course, last but not the least, and not the least important at all, is the ability to build a process which is systematic, ongoing, and which is able to help you mitigate vulnerabilities on a continuous basis. So, like I said earlier, it's not like having visibility today ensures that you're protected forever. You constantly need to evaluate your technology, your code, and unravel newer vulnerabilities which criminals are discovering, or there are good cops and bad cops, right? So the good guys are also researching equally well, and they're also trying to come up with vulnerabilities and let you know what those vulnerabilities are before the bad guys catch it. So these are some of the things that we may want to consider. But if I have to consolidate that and say what could be 3 things that startups should do, the very first thing, and I think most of us may understand this while we're chasing MVP to be out there, while we're after investors to consider us. The pressures are very different, right? The pressures are about business. It's about being there in the market at the point where your consumers have a problem that you could solve, which is where your developers are motivated and you are motivated towards building a product, right? The rewards are from consumers who want to use your product or your service or your solution. So not always are we motivating the development team or ourselves to look at security being baked in. Our time pressures and our go to market strategies are very different. However, if we take a step back and we incorporate security in design, trust me, it's going to be much easier to manage the future, a little less complex for you, because then this is something you've baked in, this is something you know of and you can manage, and as you grow bigger, you'll be able to kind of manage the ecosystem alongside. But again, that's easier said than done. We've spoken about the skill deficiencies, we've spoken about not getting the correct skills all the time. So here, while you may want to do it, the development team may not be accustomed to or may not have the necessary experience or knowledge to be able to bake in security, or to be able to recognize when there is a fault, when there is a weakness, which has gone into the design. The third aspect is, of course, we may not have the sufficient funding to enable or procure the technology that we need, which can help bring out, which would help us secure our product or test our product against global practices to ensure that these assurances are built in or those assurances can be provided. So these are, the top 3, I would say, apart from the ones that we looked at. which we definitely need to do as startups to stay ahead of that threat curve. So from here on, it's a journey of becoming a trusted partner in the cyber supply chain. We've looked at how difficult it can be. We've looked at, but we've also looked at how important it has to be, given that attackers are working, around the clock. So essentially, if you've looked at the last three key messages, if you've built a product or a solution with security in mind, you're essentially offering a little more resistance to these attackers. You're offering a little more resistance to the ecosystem where there may be unintentional failures or intentional attacks, right? One of the things that I would want to talk about here is how previously organizations used to have a philosophy saying that we can't fail. From a product standpoint, we can't tolerate disruption, or at no point of time should our customer, or a client, or our solution, our product, go down where it's where the availability is impacted. But now today, the way the scenario is, the way this ecosystem is, what we need to understand is that there are things which are beyond our control, right? Where no matter how much we would want to control, how many technical measures or interventions we may introduce, there are bound to be challenges which are going to be created by adversaries that we are not even aware of. So the shift in mindset that we really need to have here is, instead of focusing on building something which is, which is designed not to fail, we accept that there will be points of time, points in the life cycle, while we're, the product is live and it's out there, that it will be disrupted. However, this is where we need to build our competence and strategies to focus on resilience, where we say, okay, someone will attack us, but this is the way we will ensure continuity. This is the way we will bounce back up in the least possible time. And we test those scenarios, right, after we build them. And we ensure, to the extent possible, that we're able to cover a large part of the ecosystem. We're able to cover scenarios which are beyond just the usual. So this is where, having a plan for dealing with potential threats across the development lifecycle, as well as eliminating risks, before a product is deployed, can help us. However, even after we go live and even after the product is deployed, it's being used, it's being it's hosted to serve customers, we have to have resilience in mind and plan our and build our strategies around that. And these are essentially some of the practices through which, not only can we give the necessary assurances to our clients and customers, but also become a trusted partner in that global cyber supply chain. I'm sure a lot of us have aspirations which are not, just to be a local provider or a local, not just to operate in a limited territory. In the future, we may all have aspirations to grow, go beyond boundaries, serve different entities, different, deal with different clients, different industry verticals. Now, if we have those aspirations, I think one of the important steps, along with having the best product and the best answer to our consumers' problems, is to give them something which they can trust, something where we can tell them that, we recognize the cyber world isn't as friendly as it was, and we're cognizant of that fact, and we've built our solutions and our products in that manner. So, this is what all culminates into what you and I talk about on a daily basis. When we talk about different technologies like cloud and social, when we talk about leveraging big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, these are all the technologies that we are trying to leverage today, or we're trying to build products and solutions around, or introduce them in a manner where we are, bringing solutions to different problems. But these are all these are all tagged with inherent digital risks, which is where when we say cloud, for example, uh, and if you're a user of a cloud services provider, even the well-known ones, the global ones, you would realize that as you sign up, they send you a notification saying that security is a shared responsibility. It's not like the mere activity of using cloud services would make you will make you secure. All the major vendors will upfront tell you that while we will secure the infra physically and with other measures, you actually own what goes, what is hosted on our cloud service, and it is your responsibility as an organization to secure its access, to secure the data, to secure and ensure there's a limited set of ports and services which are enabled. So whatever it might be, it is the organization's responsibility. So it's not like we've outsourced security because we're using cloud, and it's not like we've outsourced problems with respect to misinformation or information security if you use social channels. All of these are important enablers. They come with their own set of inherent risks, and trust me, security can never ever be outsourced. Even if you have help which is outsourced, you have to understand it as an organization, and you have to understand the risk ecosystem that you're dealing with. Others can come in and give you solutions, can help you on your journey, but it has to be the organization which has to understand the risks they face in the digital age. There are other factors too, right? Of course, looking at clients and customers are the primary factors that most of us kind of associate with. But there are other factors today, right? Why we need to focus on digital risk. And those factors are simple to understand. I mean, this is not complex, and this is something every business person or otherwise someone in the corporate sector would truly understand. If there's a breach, it comes with its own baggage. It of course comes with disruption, but today it also comes with a lot of negative PR. Now imagine all the costs that you would have incurred till now to build a brand, and then there's that breach, and there's that negative PR surrounding that breach, which kind of makes some of the customers disappear, and some of the big ones reevaluate their relationship with you. So definitely that has become one of the reasons that you should consider evaluating your own digital risk. Second, if you realize some of the cyber breaches that the world has seen, and you consider the cost of recovering from that cyber breach, you would realize that it has been significantly higher, or it is significantly higher than the cost of protection would have been, right? So this is again another important aspect why we need to look at digital risk. I don't want to take names again of some of these organizations, but a major brand, a global brand in the gaming industry, they've kind of made it an annual ritual where they face a breach. They've lost millions of records. Of course, in the gaming arena, there aren't too many options that people shift their loyalties out. But definitely, the regulators and the law enforcement, they have been the ones who've come down heavily. They've put penalties on them to the tune of several million US dollars, which could have been saved otherwise if there hadn't been a breach, or they would have put in measures to protect themselves. And that's again another important reason that you may believe that your negative PR can be reversed. You're willing to pay the cost in terms of recovery, but if the government and the law enforcement sector, the way they are looking at cyber breaches and digital risk today, once they are in the picture, there are heavy penalties and litigation which can go on for years that you may have to face. So those are again some of the trends that we consider or we look at on quantifying why it's important to become a trusted partner in the cyber supply chain, and what could be the various inputs that we need to receive, or various perspectives that we need to keep while we go about design those programs. And I kept this purposely as a separate point on cyber criminals. Unfortunately, I couldn't gather that today for today's presentation, but there's a neat report by Interpol which kind of shows you how cybercrime and cyber criminals are organized as businesses, right? So they have designations as well. I mean, much to much to the surprise of some of the audience members, perhaps, they have a formal organization, they have a formal designation structure, they have hierarchies, they have data centers that they've hosted that they operate from. So it's not like cyber criminals are hiding. There are some cyber criminal gangs which are known to be affiliated with some of the countries, and they operate in open, right? They are attributed in a lot of reports. Governments, in different nations have a lookout notice for them. Interpol may have a lookout notice for them, but they operate in plain sight, and they operate with the blessings of perhaps their own government. But they do operate, right? And they are bigger than most of the other businesses that we see, because the tentacles that they spread and the skills that they have, it's really alarming in terms of how these syndicates have grown, or these organizations have come to light. Um, so that's again probably number 4 on the list today. But for me as a practitioner, number 1 reason why we should be focusing on digital risk and the associated parameters. So all right, I mean, we've kind of looked at what could go wrong, why we need to do it, what could be certain motivations, and what we need to do. So here are just a few basic fundamental things. Of course, we may want to go as deep as we want, depending on how big our appetite is in terms of growth. But if we're going to protect our intellectual property, if we want to protect our customer information, our financial systems, we definitely want to put controls, and we definitely want to evaluate, one, the product itself, and have a periphery or a ring of controls around, which may include hardening the platform where it might be hosted or where it might be developed, looking at an architecture which is secure, both at an infrastructure and an application level, and then of course ensuring that we're continuously monitoring, evaluating, and auditing our environment. So those are some of the best practices. So those are some of the leading practices that typically we follow. Of course, to each organization, the extent and the length and breadth of these practices could vary, but conceptually, the items on that list of things to do would remain the same. So, all right, I think it's been a fairly long talk. I think I might have used a little more time than you would have planned. But just to summarize, I think, and I hope I was able to bring home the point that the cyber supply chain and the organizations which are part of it, have to deal with complexity on a daily basis. While there are several uses of the technology which is available today, there is an equal number of vulnerabilities which may exist. And then, of course, threats which the world has seen, which we've already discovered. We've known how sophisticated and how devastating they can be. At the same time, regulators and regulations are coming up. In our country, of course, we have the IT Act, and there are different other sectoral regulations which exist. The privacy bill, the draft bill is, of course, in the parliament, again, under discussion. So there are, local and global regulations which also kind of designate what you need to do if you need to be a supplier in a specific country. But this is getting increasingly complex, and if you have aspirations to go global, I think you can no longer be, you can no longer hide yourself and say, I'm not going to look at these aspects, because they will be one of the key aspects to decide, your own growth path, and give you a sense of being part of that global chain. So with that, thank you very much for having me here, and I hope this was beneficial and useful for the participants today?
Of course.
Of course, Asim. Thank you so much for this, great presentation. Very, very educative, and I think it's very imperative to learn about the digital risk. In terms of risk management, I think we all need to understand, the all-pervasive nature of digital risk. Right now, we are living in a digital age, digital economy. Most of our lives, all the transactions, most of the transactions that we're doing is through the digital media, and most of us as entrepreneurs or small business owners or startups, most of us have organizational digital assets, and it's very important to understand the digital risk, the information security risk, from from a regulatory standpoint as well as from our own internal standpoint, the value of information that we have, the impact it might have, in terms of, someone breaching it or we losing that important vital data of our customers, the impact in terms of, not just the financial impact, in terms of our uh, in terms of our overall responsibility, in terms of our uh, uh, the word I'm missing is uh, uh, Asim, I think you are better in terms of, coming up with a vocabulary in terms of digital risk. So we have, it's, I think it's imperative to highlight the digital risk around, around the organizations that we function in. And there's a general line of thinking that I see around entrepreneurs and small business owners, is that, cybersecurity and information security risk is more, more prevalent towards bigger organizations, larger organizations who have the budgets to actually spend at at cybersecurity, information security. But I think it's on the contrary, small business owners, entrepreneurs, startup projects are very vulnerable to the digital risk. And I think you were able to, bring it out today. The kind of risks are prevalent, out pervasive, and it's not not just important to the bigger organizations, but even the startups and the small business owners, the professionals, the practitioners need to be cognizant of the risk and need to take appropriate actions to to actually defend themselves, rather than to, kind of trying to, salvage the situation, which is, quite costly. you know it's, I think
Absolutely.
that you.
I think this is truly crucial today. Remember that that ship it got stuck in the Suez Canal a few
Right.
months back,
Correct.
right? And that's exactly how risk management is, right? While we
Exactly.
would have evaluated that, and we're all aware as navigators that this is the path we want to take, that one miss from a risk perspective where we couldn't factor in, a seasonal change could be responsible for lowering the depth. That
Right.
single element caused
Correct.
disruption for so many days and billions of dollars got lost
Correct.
because trade couldn't take place. You couldn't move you had to take longer routes. And that's
Right.
essentially how the cyber world is, right? That one
Exactly.
miss, which may be intentional or unintentional, can actually lead to a disruption which is much bigger.
Correct.
Uh, if you have a little more time, I could, talk about a quick example, or if you have the other panelists ready, then, I think we could end it here.
No, no, absolutely. You can carry on, Asim. And I think the word that I was looking was reputational risk. I think the
Yep.
reputational risk, as we're trying to, build reputation, trust of our customers, as we're building up a startup, we're actually, putting in our blood, sweat, and tears, and we're building a product, we're building reputation, we're getting traction. But if we lose the trust of our customers, of our clients, that reputational risk, I think, is too valuable, and we all need to be cognizant of the digital risk that we are operating under the current environment. So yeah, Seem, I think we have time. It will be great if you can walk us through a couple of use cases or examples that you wanted to mention, and also there are a couple of questions that have come in, which probably we can take once you've kind of taken us through the examples.
Yes, I do see a question on the window. It's about finding vulnerabilities in the blockchain or
Right.
network, and then
Yes.
there's another question around using third-party services like Razorpay, etc. Do we need to have additional security?
Correct.
Let me take the questions first. I think in the
Sure.
interest of participants who would have put them out earlier.
Sure. Absolutely.
So and start with question two, because that's much more relevant for a larger audience. Blockchain, of course, is relevant too, but perhaps a few of us may be interested there.
Right.
So any service today, as long as you can qualify that as a digital service or a digital product, and you don't have to go to a Razor Pay as an example. Just pick up your phone and look at the number of applications you have on your phone, right? All of those are designed to offer something to you, right? It could be an application which uses your pictures and enhances the quality of your pictures, right? It
Right.
could be an application which helps you navigate. It could be an application which helps you make payments. All of these rest on the very fundamentals of applications, right? On how applications are built.
Correct.
Of course, they're much more leaner in terms of code, and much more feature driven. Now, if something gets access to on things on on your phone, like for example, in the with the picture application, which has access to your storage, which has access to certain features like calling and messaging.
Right.
What stops an attacker from penetrating that and getting access to everything on your phone? And this is not a hypothetical situation. This has happened in the past,
Correct.
right? There are malicious applications which are spread on WhatsApp or Signal, where you would receive a link from a friend saying install this and you'll get 100 rupees, and we all fall for it. ठीक है, I mean, let's another application. I'll make a little money, and this is for the masses, right?
Right.
People like you and me who talk about risk and cybersecurity may perhaps take a step back and say, why did I get this message and which app is this? But the masses out there, they would click on that link and they'll install it.
Correct.
Now, it's not like they have sensitive and secret information that they need to protect. It's just their own personal life, right? Which is today with an attacker.
Right.
And this is where I wanted to give that example from earlier. This is something that you and I can very well understand. And it happened to a colleague of mine. Several years back, his wife put a picture on a social media account saying, first day of school with the daughter. And back in the day, not everyone was as conscious of restricting, limiting the audience to a picture. So it's all public, right? Anyone who comes to your profile can see that picture there. Now, in a couple of hours, there were phone calls made to this person demanding ransom because the person claimed that they've kidnapped the daughter from
Right.
school.
Right.
So essentially, of course, because this guy was from the community, he reached out to law enforcement and otherwise tried to track through whatever means, and it was found that his daughter was indeed still in school. But imagine those first few seconds or minutes when you hear this.
Right.
The attacker had the precise information of the clothes she was wearing, the school bag she was carrying, right, and the location where she was dropped. Now, if your mind was not as alert, and you did not halt and start investigating yourself and start finding answers yourself, imagine the panic that would have created for you.
Correct.
And that was all because of a picture which was public,
Right.
right? And that's
Right.
exactly the thought that we need to put in when we build products and services, that we may have those features available to our clients. However, are they as secure as they would expect it to be? Right? Because that one opportunity for an attacker to leverage something which is a vulnerability is sufficient, right?
Right. Correct.
So this is exactly the complexity that the cyber world has today.
Absolutely.
And as techno business leaders, I think all of us have the responsibility to kind of start looking at this important area.
Correct.
Specifically on the question in terms of Razor Pay and extra services, of course, it doesn't hurt if you add another layer of security. It would just make it a little more difficult for a potential attacker in the future. And the more difficult you make it, the easier it is for us to survive. So that's
Yeah.
just what the answer has to be.
Correct. Absolutely.
So I think with that, I think I would again like to thank the platform here today and the participants for for tuning in, for bearing with me on this technical topic.
No, I
Uh,
think it was very interesting, Asim. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Uttam,
Asim.
your
Thanks for
thoughts?
all your time. It was really informative. As you rightly said, that data security is one piece, which cybersecurity, data security is one piece, which nobody initially looks into. But once it blows up, then obviously the entire focus shifts towards this sphere.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I have worked with a bank. I've worked with a couple of banks myself, so I do realize how critical it is from the banking operations perspective. So yeah, I mean, very informative. I could relate to most of the thoughts when you were saying that why is it important and why it needs to be given a lot more recognition than what it generally deserves. But yes, it was time well spent. I really appreciate you taking out time and being with us today. It was all, every minute was worth it. Yeah, thank you so much, Asim. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks once again.
Thanks,
Thanks a
Asim.
lot, Asim. If somebody wants to kind of reach out to you
Reach out to, yes,
for
please.
any help or guidance, would you like to share any suitable coordinates for our audience?
Sure. I did put them a while back, but let me put them here now.
Right.
Right.
So this is just a link to my LinkedIn profile in case you want to connect there.
Sure.
Of course, if you want to follow a little bit in terms of news on, what sort of attacks are coming in and what sort of strategies people are building. So
Sure.
we do keep publishing that as well on LinkedIn.
Right.
So that's one of the ways that we could definitely connect. And drop me a message. I mean, if anyone's interested to talk, I'll be happy to, be available for that conversation.
Right.
Thanks
We'll
again,
share the
guys.
coordinates, Asim, to the
Yeah.
audience. Thank you so much, Asim.
Sure.
Thanks
Thanks, Asim.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Right then. Right then. Uh, dear audience, just give us a minute, please, to align.
Hey everyone, hi. I mean, we are in the process of, Nakul wants to give a presentation on the startup fundamentals. So we are in the process of putting that up. We will take another couple of minutes at most. It will be a very comprehensive presentation. What are the various stages of startups? How they can raise funding. What are the various bottlenecks which come along the way, and how and how one can actually navigate around those troubled waters should they arise. So we have prepared a very very comprehensive presentation to take you through it. Just allow us a couple of minutes to put it up.
I hope everyone is able to see the presentation now. We'll just begin in a moment. Uh, right then. Right then. So this is a presentation from a session. We've actually, taken some management graduates and some chartered accountants through the startup fundamentals. People who are actually involved as advisors and consultants with various startups. Not taking you too deeply through this presentation. I just wanted to share a few fundamentals and a few practices. We've kind of learned throughout our journeys, throughout our experience that we might want to share with you. Things that when we look back, we wish we'd known earlier in our journeys. So some of the fundamentals and those best practices that might help you as you're developing your startup project. So we'll just very quickly take you through these slides, and if there's anything that we would if we think that probably I can probably stress upon, I'll probably take a minute longer there. uh, the audience, I think, is quite mature. I don't need to actually go through in detail in terms of what is a startup, what's the difference between a normal small business and a startup. The fundamental difference is the approach. You're looking to make an innovative business model and scale it up. uh, that is the basic difference between an approach for a startup or a small business. There's no harm being a small business. Not all businesses need to scale up rapidly. You can go at your own pace. You can have your own objectives and goals in life. So there's no hard and fast way, the right way to do it. But the basic difference between a startup and a normal small business is in these elements, is these 3-4 dimensions. Innovation in terms of a normal business, a small business, actually most of it is based on existing model. But startups look to disrupt, bring a radical change, a novel idea. In terms of profitability, startups are looking at breakneck growth, and therefore in the initial stages they are looking to acquire customers, customer acquisition. They're trying to spend too much on marketing, sales, etc., and therefore also bleed in the initial period. The small businesses look at profitability from the word go. It's a key metrics for them. And again, scalability, as I mentioned, is one of the major elements that differentiates between a small business and a startup. A startup is looking at very high scalability, and therefore investors, if you're looking to be a venture backed startup, you're looking to pitch your project, your opportunity to a investor. Scalability is one of the areas that brings in excitement to an investor. For a small business, the scalability is limited. You might be looking at your own goals, your own set of focus areas, and you might want to grow organically at your own pace. No harm in that. Normally, no, small businesses or normal businesses are normally self-funded or through family or loan, and normally startups at some point or the other look at external funding through angels and then VCs. So so these are the fundamental differences. But in terms of startup, if you're looking to make a develop an scalable idea, an innovative scalable idea, the journey normally starts from a problem set, a problem that you are facing in life or you're very passionate about, and you're looking at a solution. You've been thinking about a solution, a breakthrough solution, and you feel that your solution is innovative. It's not there in the market yet, or you are doing something better than what others are doing at the moment, and you're providing that solution, of course, through a product or a service. So what are the first steps when you're looking to kind of develop a startup project? So the first steps is definitely to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort on conceptualizing your product or services. I can't stress enough how important MVP is. Like, you've kind of listened to some of our eminent speakers when they're looking to venture back your startup, or when they're looking to shortlist your startup, they're looking for some kind of an MVP or some kind of a proof of concept or traction that gives them that confidence, that shows them validity or proof of concept and a product market fit, that excites them enough to become part of your journey to invest in your product or service or a startup. So spend enough time developing and conceptualizing your product. First validation is very important, so you need to be very clear in thinking. Don't complicate your project too much. Just make the core features and get the first 2-3 versions out there, get the feedback, and be quick on your feet. And the bonus is, if you're looking to get funding from matured venture capitalists or mature programs, you need to show the scalability. And it's just not a fad, it's not a temporary trend. It should be a total addressable market that is developing, and it's looking to develop in the future. So that's what scalability, sustainability, and the future growth is what investors are looking at when they're looking at a venture backed startup. The next point is, when you're developing, you're working on your product or service, you need to develop a core team, which again your startup is nothing but your core team. So you need to be your CEO need to be an evangelist. He need to be passionate about your product and service, and need to, a person who just wants to speak about it. He wants to get out there and spread the message. So you need that kind of a person as a CEO. If it's a tech startup, definitely you should actually go out and find a co-founder, CTO for yourself, and do not just look to outsource it to a tech vendor. This is one of the attributes that matured VCs and programs do look at. And of course, the co-founders should be aligned with your vision, should be idea generators, and they should be equity holders and not looking at it from a short-term perspective. So that your core team is your closest set of people who are very passionate about that project, and they're looking to work with you to see this through. The next aspect, a very important aspect that your team should look at, is to focus on momentum or traction. Now, traction could be, either revenue based or user based, but there's a catch 22 situation there. The best kind of traction is revenue based, but with lack of funds, it's really difficult for startups to actually start generating revenue, because they don't have enough to spend on the product. They don't have enough to go to market and do the sales and marketing at scale. But at least they can start to get users, and the best place to start to get users is from your own professional and personal network. You reach out to people in your personal and professional network and tell them to adopt the solution or test the solution and give feedback. And slowly, if the product is good enough for the relevant people, they will definitely recommend it to other people, and that user traction can also do the trick, because all the VCs or matured investors do look at some sort of a validation, some sort of attraction before they can venture back your startup. So again, very quickly, a very few important aspects to dwell within before you reach out for funding, because we see a lot of young entrepreneurs and tech startups coming in at ideation stage with a half-baked product or not even a product. Most of the plan is on papers. So and then they reach out and they discuss, and they get a little disappointed, and most of the projects, high potential projects I've seen are being dropped off within a few months or within a couple of years. The reason is they haven't actually developed the team, they haven't actually conceptualized their product or MVP at that level, and they are too early to start those conversations. So these 3-4 aspects which we've kind of discussed right now, very important as you are building your startup. One place we can probably recommend you is you can go online and search for business plan canvas. It actually lays down the different elements of business that will really help you visualize and strategize your entire company as a whole. It will list out these vital elements that you need to plan and develop. In fact, some of the aspects and elements that you haven't actually even planned will come out as you start filling out this business plan canvas. This you can do yourself, and of course, at if you need some mentor or a professional advice, you can reach out to them. But at least it will open up your eyes and your attention towards these elements that you're missing in your business plan right now. So you need to be you can go through the business plan canvas yourself, but a few important key elements that I want to highlight here is, of course, the problem and the existing alternatives you need to be cognizant of, the solution that you're developing, and then you should be clear about the target market, the customer segments that you're looking at, who will be your early adopters, what's the size of the market that you're looking at, what's the competitive advantage that your team has, and you should definitely look at developing the sales channels, the initial channels for your product or service. And all this comes together in terms of defining your unique value proposition that you should actually be able to define in terms of a in a 1 minute elevator pitch to anyone, to help them get excited enough for your product or service. And once you do that, of course, you'll be looking at your different business models, revenue streams, and of course, the cost structure that will be that will come together to deliver the business that you're developing. So these elements, once you start filling the business plan, these elements will come together, will bring out the different dimensions that you might have looked, you wouldn't have looked down at, but these are really critical as you develop your business plan. So I just wanted to highlight that you should actually go out and search for a business plan canvas and try to fill it up. You will see a lot of elements that you were missing out. Moving on, of course, you should be looking at the SWOT analysis in terms of what's your strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats are. This actually really helps you define your competitive advantage. This is one of the elements that all the investors are looking at to understand what is your unfair advantage or competitive advantage over your peers or your competitors. So once you do the SWOT analysis, you are better able to define your competitive edge. And then of course, once you do all that exercise, you should be able to to paint a future roadmap for your organization, for your project, in terms of milestones, the different project activities with different milestones, objectives, goals that you will be reaching in the next you know 12 to 24 months. This is a basic phase that you should be looking at. Each phase you should be looking at you know for the next 2 years, for 24 months. You should have a very visible, actionable plan in mind, so you can start plotting that roadmap in terms of quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, in terms of project activities, as well as the amount of funding that you will require, where you will spend those funding, and what activities and what outcomes will come out when you're actually implementing your project plan. So bringing it all together, so you've done your hard work, you've brought your team together, you've worked on the business plan, and you looked at those different elements. You've mapped out a roadmap for the next 12 to 24 months, and now you want to start those conversations with the investors. And the best way to do is through the pitch deck. A stellar pitch deck is just a story of your startup, and you need to capture it in a very great story, in terms of showing what the problem is, what your solution is, how you're actually developing your solution, the elements of your great product, the team, the opportunity, the competitive advantage, etc. So all of it should come together in a great story. So that is where you start developing your pitch deck. And of course, all the activities that you do require have a financial dimension to it, and investors want to see a financial model. In terms of, it could be a very basic financial model, but you need to project out some outcomes in terms of top line revenues, EBITDA, etc. What you're projecting, with all the money that you are looking to raise and spend on the product and marketing, etc. What are the projections that you're looking at for the next at least 3 to 4 years? So that's where you kind of bring out these documents together to tell a great story for your startup project. These are the critical elements of creating a stellar pitch deck. Like I mentioned, problem, solution, product, go to market, your competitors, and of course the ask, the financials, and why are you raising funds, how much you're raising funds, and how you will kind of invest those funds, and what are the projections that you're looking at. Again, it's not very difficult. It sounds complicated, but you need to start at your home. You need to start where your professional network lies, where your personal network lies. You reach out to your network with your product or service. Get get your MVP out there with core services or core things to your network, and get a feedback from them. Once you are fairly confident about them, you start to understand what are the different government schemes or various private equity schemes or funding programs, VC programs, accelerators, incubators out there. Then you start applying to these good programs, and that's when you start to get feedback. Or if you're very aligned to what they're looking at, you might get the smart capital, you might get the mentorship and the smart capital that you're looking at. But don't get disappointed if you're not getting if you're not getting a breakthrough, because it's not easy. We see a lot of success stories on social media, but I've been involved with a lot of startup projects, and I understand that it's not easy to actually get that breakthrough. the real stories and struggles are very different from what the final result is. So don't get disheartened, take feedback and keep moving on. You can also leverage good advisory firms who can actually help you craft and articulate your startup story via pitch decks, financial models, your strategic insights, get you mentorship and unlock connects for you. So these are the these are the ways that once you've conceptualized your product or service, you've brought together your team, you've worked on the different dimensions, you've brought together a basic business plan, not very complicated. You've kind of plotted a business canvas plan, and then you've kind of you've gotten some feedback, you've gotten some traction, you feel confident about your product and service. Now you feel, you yourself understand that this is when I would need fuel for the next stage. This is where I can actually scale from this one particular city or state or geography to the other states, or from one segment to the other segment. That's where you start to reach out to investors, accelerator programs, relevant angels, etc. And then these conversations kind of materialize. And of course you can always reach out to advisory firms like ours to get mentorship, or to unlock unlock connects, or even get free feedback. So we are always happy to to talk to you and give you feedback. So I think these were the important aspects. These are just technical issues, don't really mind. So these were the important aspects I just wanted to bring to your notice, the best practices and some fundamentals that sound very easy, but these are some of the issues that I see being left out in most of the startups, and that's why there's a high failure rate in startups. You need to be very stable, and you need to persist with your idea. You need to take it slow as well. There's a common misconception that in startups you need to definitely run. It's not so. You need to bring together a great team. You need to spend time and conceptualize your product and service, and slowly you will feel confident yourself that you are developing something which is actually solving the problem, which is actually adding value. And that's where you'll feel confident enough to actually start reaching out to the investors and start developing pitch deck and financial model to articulate your story. So I think these were the aspects we wanted to highlight. And just to make things real and interactive, probably I can invite Utsav to probably do a small elevator pitch for Robofolio. As a founder of Robofolio, he can probably kind of walk us through an elevator pitch, just to make things real.
Hey everyone, hi, I'm back with you. So, I had worked on an idea, Nakul and I had worked on an idea together, which is by the name Robofolio, or Robotics in Wealth Advisory. How you leverage on artificial intelligence and robotics tool in order to advise better investment solutions to the client. So here we go. I'm starting off with the elevator pitch. So Robofolio is all about better investing, helps you plan your investments your way, converts passive savings into more profitable investment assets. Would you let a high fees wealth manager manage your investments, or consider a low fees automated robo financial advisor manage your wealth? Robofolio is a world class answer to the global situation. It helps you invest at the convenience of your fingertips with investable amount as little as USD 50. It acts like your personal analyst, leverages on artificial intelligence tools to sift through billions of elements of data, performing hundreds of computations every day, providing global coverage of stocks beautifully presented on your mobile phone. It helps you manage your investments as easily as you change your playlist on your mobile phone. It is for fee conscious clients who prefer to see their investment recommendations and performance in front of them on demand, rather than in a quarterly summary prepared by a wealth advisor. According to Deloitte Research, robo advisory as a service is set to grow by 4 times, with expected $16 trillion in assets. Robofolio algorithms are constantly scanning, analyzing, and optimizing your investments portfolio. It makes your money work for you. Robofolio, your personal wealth advisor, cheaper and wiser.
Thanks, Utsav. That was great. Guys, actually, this elevator pitch got us shortlisted in the Standard Chartered Ventures, as well as we were able to actually make it to the Dragon's Den stage as well.
Yes, I'm sorry to cut you in between, Nakul. Sorry about that. So we made it to Dragon's Den for funding and sponsorship. But that was last year, same time.
Right, right. So just to make things real, just we want to share with you, things are not as difficult as some people make it sound. You need to keep things real. You need to keep things basic. You need to develop high quality solutions, either products or services. You need to bring together a good team, work on the product, keep things real. You need to connect with the users. That is the underlying magic. Actually, you need, whatever you're solving the problem for that audience, you need to connect with them so that they're able to actually appreciate your product or service. They actually see the value in your product and service, and they instantaneously kind of recognize that this is solving a problem that they were actually facing, a issue, a challenge they were facing. So if you're able to do that with a high quality solution, keeping things very real, very easy, that's where people kind of recognize you, they help you, support you, and that's where you get shortlisted as well at various forums. We're still in our journey of this project, but we just wanted to kind of share with you how we kind of shared an elevator pitch with one of the top panels for a venture fund, and that's how we got shortlisted as well. So we just want to keep things real and share it with
Yes,
you.
of course, of course, of course.
Right, Utsav, thank you so much. I think we've had a great day.
course.
Would you like to kind of wrap up things for
Yeah,
us, and
I
then
would.
also
Yeah.
tell us how we can probably meet again?
Yeah. So, in the rightness of things, I would like to thank all the stakeholders, all the people who have been a part of today's event. On behalf of ConnectWorks, I would like to thank you for taking out time and being a part of the event. Event like these, helps us to continue to boost the envelope forward, pushing the envelope forward. A lot of things happen within the ecosystem, but what generally happens is, since we are so involved in our own project with respect to a particular startup or a domain, that at times we are not able to understand and appreciate the different sides of it. So forums like these helps to bring all stakeholders together under one roof, and they share their own business ideas, their own journey, how they have come across in their way, and which are the aspects that they think are also critical in order to scale up the proposition, right? In today's events earlier today in the first half, Mr. Maninder pointed out, there needs to be a strong balance between the social innovation and economic innovation, right? So later part of it, we actually one of the speakers, Mr. Simukhi, he mentioned about how cybersecurity, data security is of great, it is of great importance. And for me, who has worked in banking for more than a decade, actually understands and appreciate the cybersecurity and how important it is to keep the client confidential data, because there are so many attacks which happen on a very regular basis on various they may even breach through firewalls. So these are the various areas which needs to be looked upon. So yeah, I mean, really appreciate you guys coming over. I just as a closing remark, I just wanted to make a final announcement. India Impact Investment Summit, with many investors from philanthropic foundations to impact investors to commercial investors seeking to generate commercial, social, and environmental benefits from their investments. India is in the need of a platform where Indian angel investors can begin the impact investing market. Furthermore, there are incubators, accelerators, networks, and advisory firms that help both businesses and investors by facilitating deal flow. So yeah, that's pretty much from my side, Nakul. Thanks to everyone out there. Thank you, Kshitiz, for being there as our IT man for the day. So yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, Utsav. Thank you, all the stakeholders, for bringing this together. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've learned about private equity as well as government programs, regulatory landscape, risk, and other aspects of relating to startup and impact organizations. We'll probably look forward to again meeting you soon at the India Impact Investment Summit, which we'll be sharing the dates pretty soon with you.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much, and take care, everyone.